The Pittsburgh Steelers coaching search isn't over just yet, and they're looking for a couple of assistants with ties to Arthur Smith that they'll bring in and look to add to their already pretty deep coaching staff. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackmine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/allsteelerstalkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are continuing to bring in coaching candidates looking to fill multiple positions. According to league sources, the team is set to bring in Matt Baker, Mateo Cambui, and Phil Matus for multiple roles within their coaching staff. Matt Baker comes from the Atlanta Falcons, worked with Arthur Smith last season as a special teams assistant, but he does have experience as a quarterbacks coach at the college level, played in the NFL for 3 or 4 seasons as a quarterback himself. From 2008, I think, to 2009, he was actually on the Buffalo Bills active roster. Has ties to Arthur Smith and the Steelers. You don't know where they're looking with this one. You look at a guy like Matt Baker and you say maybe they are looking for an assistant quarterbacks coach because they have relieved their assistant quarterbacks coach. Maybe they're looking for a special teams assistant because Danny Smith is getting up there in age. Maybe they're just saying we need assistants in general and we will look for familiar faces. And somewhere along the lines, Arthur Smith believes this is potentially the right hire. Mateo Cambui also comes from Atlanta. He's their assistant offensive line coach. The Steelers have an assistant offensive line coach in Isaac Williams. Chances are he's sticking around. I don't see him as a name that's going to go anywhere, especially after just coaching at the Senior Bowl. Seems like a name the Pittsburgh Steelers like, and Pat Meyer is not going anywhere at all. But again, maybe the Steelers are looking for just offensive assistants as a whole. They have an entire strength and conditioning staff that needs to be filled. And that brings us to this next one in Matus, who comes from Boston College, is the head strength and conditioning coach over at the Eagles, or for the Eagles. Has 6 years of experience before that at Ohio State doing the same thing, but as an assistant. And let me tell you, just doing a quick Google search of this guy and looking up some videos, there are a lot of pictures and a lot of videos of him screaming and looking real intense and getting guys fired up. And you got to like that. On top of that, Mike Tomlin has connections at Boston College. He has connections at Ohio State, obviously. Ohio State and the Pittsburgh Steelers are very familiar with each other. Maybe that's the move. What it shows me is this, though. The Pittsburgh Steelers are not done filling their coaching staff. We jumped the gun thinking that they were done filling their coaching staff and that things weren't going to change. And at this point, I'm thinking every position is open and every position could be changed. And that goes as deep as a new quarterbacks coach. I don't know if Mike Sullivan's going to stay. A new running backs coach. I don't know if Eddie Faulkner is going to stay. I think as of right now, the only position that is safe is Pat Meyer as an offensive lines coach because he has helped develop guys like Broderick Jones. He has certainly helped change the culture on that offensive line. And if you ask any of those guys, they love Pat Meyer. They tell you how much he has helped their development, how great of a coach he is, how great of an assistant he is. He works well with the entire coaching staff. He has a long lineage of success in the NFL. He's a guy that, and again, look at, I just did this same speech for Frisman Jackson the other day, and 2-3 hours later, the Steelers parted ways with him. So maybe I'm totally wrong there, but he seems like the only name that's sticking around. But for everybody else, I think the Steelers are going big. They're shooting for the stars. They're looking for new options, and they're looking for options that can bring success. They're looking young. They're looking at potential, and these are not nobody hires anymore. Maybe they don't have the experience, but they have reasons to come to Pittsburgh. They have reasons and connections that have gotten them an opportunity simply just to get an interview with the Steelers, which is as big as it gets in the NFL. And that's where the Steelers are. I think that there are more moves coming. I would highly anticipate more moves coming. I would highly anticipate plenty of hires happening in the next couple of weeks. And I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking at this, and I said this yesterday when we were talking about the quarterbacks and the trades and everything else. They're looking at this situation and they're just going, we need a new team. We need a new culture. We need a new environment. We need to hit the standard that everybody is calling us out on. James Harrison said it the other day. The Steelers aren't meeting the standard that they have set for themselves, and they're not. And everybody and their mother has called them out for it in the last 6 months. And I think finally they have hit a point where Art Rooney is acknowledging there is an urgency and a lack of patience when it comes to winning playoff games, that Mike Tomlin realizes his back is finally against the wall and that it is becoming a place where people view him as a coach that can only get you to the playoffs but can't get you to a Super Bowl. And I think he realizes that's impacting his legacy. On top of that, you got plenty of players who need to win playoff games. You have TJ Watt, whose entire legacy, everything he's done, comes down to a bunch of people who will say things like, well, he's never won a playoff game. Okay, there have been lots of very successful defensive players who've never won a playoff game, and Mike Tomlin doesn't want that answer or that reason to hold him back. They realize that they need a quarterback. They've pushed that, and they realize that they need new coaches, and they realize that they need young, opportunistic staff members who are going to come in here, be strong assistants, help change everything, speak up, put their 2 cents in, and hopefully change the culture. Hopefully change the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense operates as a whole, because that's where they're at. That's where everybody was at the end of the season. This is not a team that could go into 2024 and do the same things. And if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you should be sitting around looking at it going, this is the first time in a long, long time that it feels like change is coming. It feels like the effort is being put in there to actually make some change, to actually find a winning formula instead of just the same old formula that gets you to point A but not to point B. That's where they're at. And when it comes to the Arthur Smith connection, and a lot of people are going to say, I don't want anybody from Atlanta. His time in Atlanta stunk. Atlanta had a lot of positives. It had a lot of negatives, but it had a lot of positives. And it doesn't mean that every coaching member and every member of that staff was incompetent or doesn't deserve a job. A lot of times it means that those guys didn't have enough opportunity, that those guys should have had a bigger role and didn't, and the people above them were more of the issue. A lot of times that's what that means. And to bring guys over with familiar faces that Arthur Smith views as up-and-comers is a good thing, because Arthur Smith has success in this league as a coach and could identify good coaches. It doesn't mean that he wasn't successful or was more successful than he was in Atlanta, because he wasn't. His time in Atlanta was treacherous and it was tough, and you look at it and you say, overall, that wasn't a success. It was a failure. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't have enough experience in this league, especially as an assistant coach, working at a couple of positions and a couple of different jobs, to realize there are good assistants out there, and I could pinpoint some of these good assistants. And we're going to bring them over, and we're going to have some ties there, and we're going to try to land them. Communication, our relationships are huge in this business. If you can impress somebody, especially your head coach, and they're willing to say, hey, let's give him a shot, I think that speaks volumes, because for a team that wasn't super successful in Atlanta, there are a lot of coaches that Arthur Smith isn't bringing over or trying to bring over for interviews. And to start with these, I think it says something. Will they get the job? Who knows? But this is the next round. There will be more rounds that come. But for right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are continuing to look. I think that's very optimistic. And you could say, oh, these are nobody names, but chances are there aren't many coaches out there, especially this level, especially the positions that these guys can fill: assistant quarterbacks coaches, assistant offensive line coaches, special teams assistants, strength and conditioning coaches. There aren't a lot of names out there that the majority of the people would say, oh, I know that guy. That's a great name. Not at that low of a level. So to get some up-and-comers that people believe in, I just think that whether you know who they are or not, whether they're a huge name or not, whether they have connections in the right place or not, it's good to see that the Pittsburgh Steelers are putting the effort out there to try and fix this staff and make it a very competent one in 2024.